we're here as directors with very different careers, very different ways we make art, make a living. And something we were talking about backstage that I do think is an interesting question is, how did you get your DGA card?
Yeah, it's a question they asked us for social, so you guys can either put it on social before they do, or I see all the phones out. But I think it's cool because I think it does key into this conversation that we're having. I made a feature. Most people assume I got into the DGA because of Moonlight. Not the case. I was paid $5,000 to direct Moonlight, which would have been illegal had I been in the DGA. And 8 years before that, I'd made a film called Medicine for Melancholy, super low budget movie. Thank you very much for the 5 people that saw it. I appreciate y'all. And that movie got reviewed, critics pick at the New York Times, was on A.O. Scott's end of the year list, did really well, still did not get me to the DGA, obviously. It was only after Moonlight came out, so Medicine for Melancholy made it in 2008. I got signed at CAA, I had a deal at Focus Features. I wanted to make a living as a director, and I just could not. I couldn't direct an episode of anything, I couldn't get a meeting anywhere. It's just no one wanted to take a guy who had directed a $15,000 feature and allow them to direct an episode of television. It was my friend, Justin Simeon, who created a show called Dear White People, who even before Moonlight came out, said, hey, Barry, I have this episode of Dear White People. I'd love for you to come and direct it. I was like, oh, but I'm not the DGA. He goes, well, you're probably going to take your whole fee for directing an episode to pay your way into the DGA, but once you do, you'll be in the DGA and you can direct this episode. So that was how I got my DGA card.
Wow, that's amazing.
And how did you get yours?
And it was also television. Well, similar to, I mean, not similar to you, because my first movie did not get a New York Times Critics Pick, but I made this movie, We Strangers, in that premiered at South by in 2024, small independent film that I did make with the help of the DGA, which I was very grateful for. But the way I got my DGA card was in 2018, this TV show called The Other Two, which was on Comedy Central at the time, that now is at HBO Max, and who knows what that's going to be called. That's Paramount something. That I also did not have my DGA card at the time. I took the first time episodic directors class. I had never been on a proper television set. I just made short films. That's all I knew. And also paid my entire first episode directing fee to get in. But it was, and we will talk about it more, but that helped me have a career as a director, not as a feature director, but as a director, was from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting distinction, the difference between having a career as a director versus having a career as a feature film director. One, I think a career is something that hopefully, I think with the right mindset, you're always building. You know, it's never present, you know, you're always building it. You're thinking future tense, and you're certainly not thinking past tense, because once you think you have had a great career, your career is done. And I think that as a feature film director, it's interesting. I was thinking about this in my film school. Our dean said filmmaking is a blue-collar art form, which I always loved, because blue collar, you think of plumbers, carpenters, maybe you could say architects, but people who are constantly developing a skill, refining that skill, going out and building things. The good thing is the more you practice at something like that, the better you can get, no matter what. If you practice, you can get better. But when you think of film or directing as an art form, it's like, oh, do I have it or don't I have it? And sometimes you can convince yourself that you do have it, and I'm sorry, but I've seen your film, you don't have it. And because you don't have the wherewithal to go, not do I have it or don't I have I mastered the skill yet, you're not willing to look at yourself and see what you've done and then go out and actually do work, practice to perfect that skill. And so I think of directing and feature filmmaking as something, a career, oh, it's brutal. You guys might look at me and say, Barry Jenkins has a great career. And Barry Jenkins is like, I ain't got shit. Because I still have to create the next thing. And in some ways, that's beyond my control. I think there are other aspects of a career in directing. Well, you do have a bit more control. So the fact that both of us got our cards in television is not a thing that I look down on it in a pejorative. I see it as a great way. We are practicing, you know, when we're working in this format so that we can be better when we go and work in this other format. Did I make any sense? I'm so
100%. I mean, it's interesting because, well, what you said about having control and not having control, I mean, making movies, for most, especially most movies they require a ton of money, right? And so it's even $1 million feature is a ton of money for us, you know? And so it's really hard because I hear actors talk a lot about, you know, you have to be chosen for the part. And I think what's beautiful about writing, directing especially, is that you create the art yourself, but you're not doing it yourself. You're doing it with a lot of people, and you're doing it with monetary buy-in of some sort. And that takes a long time. That's just the truth. We all know this. That takes a long time to get going. And when you know, especially with your first movies, any money you get, you're just like, put it back into the movie. And so when we talk about how do you kind of sustain a life and a career as a feature director, I'm very curious what your take is, because from my perspective, that is what you do. And for me, I have not made a cent making a movie, and the only way I make a living is through television. But the way I can speak to the way I sustain it, and it's just because, like you said earlier, like, because I just love making movies, and I love the idea. I kind of have like, maybe nobody else thinks I'm successful at making movies because I've only made one, but I have a guiding light that's just like this. I'll be with this project for 10 years if I have to, and I'll find a way to still love directing and direct in other ways to keep the love alive, to keep the craft alive, whatever I have to do so that all the rejections and all the bad feelings or all the people looking down on me don't keep me down. Like, for me, it's a lot of like, I'm still in that place where I'm constantly just working on keeping the confidence up, keeping the passion up, keeping the notes, making sure the notes are making the movie better. Like, I'm still very much in that place, but I feel very fortunate that I'm still getting the opportunity, very grateful I'm still getting an opportunity to keep the craft practice alive. But did that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, I was at a plane last night with a 7-month-old, with a 23-year-old, my wife. On the record, I said she was 23. Our nanny and the dog. So I'm a little brain soggy for sure. But no, it definitely made sense. I mean, it's just. I told everybody I was gonna be positive. I'm gonna be positive.
You gotta be honest.
But then I was at the DGA Awards, and even our president, Mr. Nolan, he was very honest about the situation that we're all living and working in right now. So I will be positive, but positively honest. It's just tough. You know, I think this forum that we're in, I think it's about diversity and diverse directors in some sense. But I have to start at the baseline, which is right now, it is difficult for any person to make a film. Now, it's always been really difficult to make a good or a great film. That's just like point blank period. Just like, that's just difficult. It is right now so difficult. And here's the thing. Many of you guys are really, really good. You're really strong directors. But there are so many of you that are so strong, and there are so few people who, A, want to work with a strong director, not someone who's not just going to say yes, but have an opinion. And also, too, there are people there are less people who want to see a strong director tackle something that is very difficult or unknowable. So it is just like, it is tough right now for anybody. Now, it doesn't make it untrue that it is tougher for someone who comes from XYZ project, you know, or XYZ broken home, or XYZ this and that. It's just true. Both those things are absolutely true. And so when I think about what it takes to sustain a career as a director, as a feature film director, it is whatever the hell you need to do. I made a movie for $15,000 with friends I went to film school with. I then worked at Banana Republic for 3.5 years while I had a deal at Focus Features and an agent at CAA. Because having a film on the year-end list at the New York Times doesn't pay the rent. But I was also, at the same time, I was working at the Telluride Film Festival. I'd been there in 2002 as a student, and I went back every year. I literally had a movie screening at the Toronto International Film Festival, and I was the concession stands manager at the Telluride Film Festival. Thank you for that applause. Because you know why? To your point, I just wanted to be where cinema was. And I thought at some point being where cinema is going to give me a better appreciation for what cinema is and how I can apply the things I'm seeing here to my own cinema. That didn't guarantee that I was going to end up sitting on this stage right now, but just having faith that me having faith in my own passion was enough. It kind of had to be enough. And right now, I don't know what to tell anyone who's trying to find the blueprint to build a career as a feature filmmaker. Anything else besides be obsessed with feature filmmaking. And be aware of your skills at the present moment, and know that your skills at the present moment don't mean those are going to be your skills in the future moment. If you continue to do things to work on them. I'm just kind of rambling.
No, that's so beautifully said. You mentioned, I mean, you have had such a unique, beautiful career that keeps on going, because a career is something we look at when we're dead, I guess. But like, you have such, that's at the end of life to speak about it later. You've made beautiful art.
There was a Chappelle joke in there somewhere. I was trying to do that thing. That's where he goes.
You've made beautiful art and will continue to make beautiful art at the indie level and at the studio level. We're
trying to produce it at the indie level now.
Yeah.
Trying to help folks like y'all in the audience who don't see how to get from that place of I think I can, I believe I can, I know I want to, I will, to someone who was in that same place, who doesn't have money to finance films, getting someone else to go, hey, trust me, I got you and I got this person and we can go do this thing. It's happened for us, my company Pastel, over the last few years. So yeah, you're right. I sometimes think, oh, I'm powerless, but then I have to look at what I'm doing and go, no, you got some power, bro.
Yeah, like you produced After Sun, and that's so true. And I feel like you've really taken into your hands with Pastel to be like, we can co-sign first-time directors, second-time directors, people of color, any minority, basically people that don't see themselves in a lot of the rooms with the studio execs, or the studio execs don't see themselves.
But you know, it hasn't happened intentionally that way. It's okay. as you recite that, it does make sense. I'll never forget, we were at the Independent Spirit Awards with Beale Street. Regina won this award. And her whole speech was about Miss Regina King won an award for a role that I directed. Shockingly, we did that. But she gave this speech about, because the same forum that we're in, the Annenberg Report, all these different things, and she was basically like, why aren't y'all in this room supporting more female directors? And we looked at ourselves as the company. It's like, yeah, why aren't we? And since then, we've produced Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always by Eliza Hittman, After Sun by Charlotte Wells, All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt by Raven Jackson, Sorry Baby by Ava Victor, and True Detective Night Country by Issa Lopez. All women directors, which is really cool. But it wasn't, maybe subconsciously, that was a mission statement. But also, too, we're looking for people that are in the situation that we saw ourselves in, because it was 8 years between Medicine for Melancholy and Moonlight. And it's just one of those things where I'm going to start thoughts and then they're going to trail off. But I do have a small child at home.
But that is very beautiful, because these incredible filmmakers, and I know, and I'm friends with some of them, what's so lovely is they've always had those movies inside them, right? And then they come to you guys as producers, and I'm sure you help develop, you also co-sign, which is a huge thing. You help make these films, and now they can go off and they can have careers. And that is so important, because, I mean, I'm also curious, you've worked with so many studios, you have these relationships. Maybe you feel comfortable speaking to this, maybe you don't. You can kind of spin this question, just talk about whatever you want anyway. But like, Mike, I'm curious sort of what you've noticed being in these rooms, do you think, I don't know how to phrase this, it's definitely harder for people of color, for people that are quote unquote minorities. They're not all that anyway. But like, you know, what have you noticed about studios trusting those directors?
It's definitely harder. You remind me of an anecdote. When I first came to Los Angeles in 2004, 2003, one of my best friends, who now is a producer at Pastel, this guy Mark Sariak, he was an assistant to an agent at this company called Broder, which I don't think exists anymore. And at the same time, I was a director's assistant to a director named Darnell Martin, who was directing a movie shout out to Darnell, Their Eyes Are Watching God. So both the Harpo office and Broder were on Doheny or Maple Drive. They were on Maple Drive. And there was a BMW dealership in the ground floor of Broder. And I'll never forget, I went to Broder to have lunch with Mark one day, and we were walking out of the building, and one of the assistants drove out in like a G-Wagon, like this. And I was like, Mark, how does that kid have it? He goes, oh, you don't know? Like, half the assistants, you know, their parents are like executives or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's how the fuck they could do this job. It blew my mind. So yes, in some ways it is harder because, you know, a kid from where I'm from can't come out and make the $80 a day, whatever it was, to be an assistant at Broder, and then have to get across town. You have to look a certain way, all this other shit you have to pay for. So yes, it is harder. But, at the same time, I do think this town, you know, I just ran into Richard Rushfield back there, and Richard's always writing, you know, all this stuff. That's very fair, you know. I feel like he wants to hug us young people. Well, I'm not young anymore. He wants to hug the young people so they can have a way into the industry. And a lot of that scaffolding that was once there is just there no longer. Mark Sariak's a great example. Mark went from working on the desk of an agent, I believe the guy's name was Bruce Kaufman, and then Bruce made a recommendation of Mark to a producer named Mark Johnson, who was creating Breaking Bad, Chronicles of Narnia at the time. Mark went and worked with Mark Sariak. My buddy went and worked with Mark Johnson for about 8 years, and then now Mark produces stuff with me. He's got training by one of the greatest producers in town. That came out of him. He's a white guy, but he's a white guy from Live Oak, Florida. You know, Mark is from basically 3 steps away from the projects, you know, in the middle of nowhere. There's a show called Rectify. They refer to Live Oak as Satan's butthole on that show. But he came out, you know, we ate ramen, he did the work, he got all this great training. So it is possible, but this town is still in some ways a meritocracy, because I was just texting with a friend of mine that, you know, you can't go anywhere in this town without hearing his name. Franklin was talking about Ryan Coogler, who directed Sinners. And I think about when I first met Ryan up in the Bay Area, and Ryan was trying to build Fruitvale Station. And he got grants from San Francisco and the Sundance Labs. He makes this film. The film is great. The next film he makes is a piece of IP, like a post-school called Creed. And everybody's like, what the hell is this? And then he goes from that and he makes Black Panther. People are like, wait, the Fruitvale guy? What the hell is this? And I'm imagining Ryan, who has never code switched, being in rooms with executives that you were talking about, studio people, and all they see is, yo, this person knows exactly what they're talking about. They know exactly what they want to do. Everything they're telling me, it's not them projecting. I was going to use another word that starts with a B. It's them literally manifesting. I am going to bet on that. Now, Ryan Coogler is a super high threshold for anyone to meet. Right now, if you were to choose 3 or 4 careers in this town right now that you could step into, that's going to be one of them. And so it's hard for me to say we should all strive to be Ryan Coogler, but I do know if you become Ryan Coogler and you walk into a studio in this town, you're going to work. You're going to work. Now, how do we all get there? We have to continue to be honest with where we are and our skills, our aptitude, our presentation. Not code switching. When I say presentation, just our presentation, and just keep building and keep getting better. I have this anecdote. When we were coming on this thing, so I screenshotted this. I got an Instagram notification. Somebody posted something about Moonlight, and it was just about the color blue, all this stuff. I'm in the comments, and this one comment absolutely broke my heart. This is not going to be funny. This is serious. After all these comments of people just talking about the film, this one person, I'm going to read, the Silent Flame, goes, "Doesn't it worry anyone that not all of us going to be successful?" And it was like, as someone who, I'm practical. You guys heard me say, do I have a career? I am ruthlessly practical and pragmatic. And does it bother me that we're not all going to be successful? Because we can't all be successful. But the next comment was, somebody's trying to call me, get out of my way, telemarketer. The next comment was no, because successful is subjective.
Wow.
And there's a guy in this building that I went to film school with. And when you're in film school, everybody wants to be a director. That's what we're all there for. We all aspire to be. And this person is not a feature film director. We're talking about careers. But this person does work at the DGA. You know, the first time you see a really fancy watch, you turn it over and you see all the gears in the back. This person is one of those gears that's providing for everyone in this room that has a DGA card. And this person met their spouse at the DGA, has children. So fucking successful. And I think I would have never imagined that his career would take that route, the same way he probably looks at me and goes, I would never imagine your career would take that route. So does it worry me that we're not all gonna be successful? No, because success is something we all have to define for ourselves. And I also think too, I see it happen often enough with enough people, you know, whether it's a Charlotte Wells or an Ava Victor or a fucking Ryan Coogler, oh my God, that if we all continue to work, enough of us will be. And hopefully those of us that are will be the kind of success that wants to see the rest of us be successful as well and wants to do whatever we can to inspire success in the rest of us as well.
I mean, that was so beautiful. Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And I'm so grateful that people like you exist, that what I think of as a successful director is part of your life's work is also bringing other people up and spending the time. 'Cause that's not easy work. A lot of people just kind of, it's a lot to make one movie. But then to spend your time to build a company from the ground up to help other directors, that's kind of the only way to do it, because we have to do this together.
Making movies is so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it is. I mean, and there's other shit that's difficult and harder in other ways. But everyone in here, when they set out to make a movie, they have this thing in them. I'm assuming, I'm projecting now, they just want to make the most either beautiful or loving or deep or gracious piece of work they possibly can. And that feeling is real. Mm-hmm. But then that feeling is met by your ability, the crew's ability, the conditions. It can be the weather. It can sometimes be the studio. It can be so many different things. But the thing that's driving you is so pure. And it's just one of those things where eventually something will be beyond your control. And you are just at the will of fate. We have 35 seconds. I don't know that anyone from a studio is sitting in the room right now. I wanted to say that part because I think everyone who's attempting to have a career as a filmmaker, they are doing it for the sole reason of trying to create something that is wonderful. I think inviting cynicism into that process and inviting fear into that process is a thing that keeps a lot of the wonder that is possible in this town from manifesting.
Yeah, you can't make art from fear. Well, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I think that was very inspiring to remind us that, you know, passion drives all good art. And thank you guys so much.